Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tech Sharmit podcast. Today I'm joined by another special guest, Tore Nestenius, who is joining us all the way from Sweden. If I talk about him, then he is a Microsoft MVP, .NET architect, and a technical trainer with deep expertise in OpenID Connect, identity, and security. His journey with .NET spans over 2 decades and includes building programmers heaven which reached 750,000 monthly visitor. Not only this, he has also contributed in a different role by answering the questions on Stack Overflow and so many other things. So in today's episode, we will talk about the story behind Programmer's Heaven, his transition to independent consulting, common mistakes with OpenID, Connect, and OAuth, and also his commitment to giving back through the Stack Overflow. But before we get started, I would like to thank Taw for joining us today in this episode. And now I request you to please initiate the discussion by telling us a bit about yourself.
Hi. So my name is Tore Nestenius. I'm from Sweden, and I've been programming since I was like 10, 11 years old. And since then, I've been hooked into the kind of world of programming. And I think it's all about the curiosity. You want to learn, you want to understand, you want to build things, you want to kind of invent, my father was also a kind of engineer building things. So I guess I have it in my genes and in my blood to build and to be curious and to, invent a new kind of way of doing things.
Right. So, Tor, as you just mentioned that you started the programming from the age of 11 and 12, which is quite inspiring for all the folks like who wanted to start their career into the programming thing. So, I just wanted to know like what was that particular moment that sparked your interest into this IT industry, specifically to .NET as well, like how everything got started.
Well, I mean, it started when I got my kind of first kind of, the TV game. I mean,
Okay.
TV games at home, like Atari, console games. And then I got my first computer, a VIC-20. And when you start with those computers, you basically got a basic prompt, and you have to start typing. You have to start kind of entering your code from day one. It's not like in Windows where you click on things. You have to type. So
Hmm.
everything was typing, and then you got the Commodore 64, and then I went into the Atari ST computer, and back then those computers was kind of easy to understand. It was kind of, and there were not any kind of protection. It was not kind of, it was open. You could tinkering with the hardware. You could you know build things, and you could kind of really understand it from ground up, down to the assembly language up to the kind of expansion ports, and you could build hardware and software, and really learn it from the ground up, all from assembly language to that. So I was building things, and eventually, when I was like 19, 20, I decided I wanted to make games, but making games for Atari or for Amiga was it's a bit lame. I want to do real games, and real game developers do games for Nintendo or Sega Mega Drive. So eventually, I wanted to do Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis games, but as a 20-year-old, no money, no company, no kind of license. It's really hard to get started because you need to buy all those kind of expensive equipment to make real console games. But I looked at my Sega Mega Drive, and I thought, couldn't I build myself? So actually, I went on a journey to build my own hardware developer kit for the Sega Mega Drive, really kind of building circuit boards and replacing those cartridge games with my own kind of memory system and a small firmware kind of BIOS in the Mega Drive, and then I could download binary code to run on the Mega Drive from my Atari computer, and it worked. And I did blog about it for quite a few years ago, and actually that blog post, got to place number 4 on Hacker News, and that's one of my kind of biggest achievements. Being on Hacker News top 10.
Yes.
That was really kind of fun, and pretty excited to see my Google Analytics, the traffic when it hits that Happy News and you saw like, I don't know, 60,000 views in a week, you go, wow, it was kind of an amazing moment.
That's great. Like,
But yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
But then, I always wanted to build things. So eventually I created a community called Programmer 7, and it was actually my first website in 95, 96. And, back then you didn't know as much. But I, was a kind of really kind of dedicated to it. So I built this community, online community, and it kind of started off because I did have a large collection of source code, tutorials, tools, and similar things because I did have a BBS, a bulletin board before that. So I had a lot of great content, but I wanted to share that content with the world. So I created this developer community called Programmer 7. And around the year 2000, I realized, hey, I can live on this website. I got my revenue. So I quit my job at Ericsson doing mobile phone development and worked on this website for over 8 years full time. So, and it grew to quite a lot of visitors. And it was pretty good experience because you did everything from ordering servers from Dell online to administration to sales to SEO to building newsletters and adding content. And so you did everything to manage a website on your own. And it gave me a good perspective of web development in general, I think.
All right. So, just one question here. Like, you shared your entire journey, like how everything got started, right? Your influence, gaming is one thing that turned you in a great developer, right? So, my
Yes.
question is, in 2026, suppose you got an opportunity to restart your career, just a hypothetical
Yeah.
scenario. So, what changes would you like to implement there? Like, are you going to start with the same technology, or you would like to opt something different now?
But I think I'm a .NET developer, and I think I really enjoy the .NET community. And I think at the same time, you're getting old. And I think it's more fun to be really good at something than try to switch to I don't know, Java and be really bad at Java or JavaScript and CSS. I'm not a CSS guy, so it would be look terrible, and I don't have that. And I think it's I mean, I really do want to get into depth into things and really understand how it works. So change to a different platform. I don't see that's the real benefit because I will never be good at Java or JavaScript. So, but I really enjoy the backend. I enjoy the kind of architecture, security, and the .NET space. So I think I would be staying in the .NET space for a while longer. And I think there's still so much things to learn. In that, regardless of language. I mean, security or authentication that I've been having a big passion for the last year. So, and architecture as well. So there's a lot of things to learn.
Yes, so I think we can conclude that .NET community had got a great leader, like who has the loyalty towards this technology, and you that is
Yeah,
that is the reason like you are consistently contributing for this platform because you know
yeah,
the worth of this platform and technology. So that's a great thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay, and Tao, you just mentioned about few of your great initiative, and among that, one thing is related to the Programmers Heaven, which you created
yeah,
at university, and
yeah.
I think which grew to 7 lakh and 50,000 monthly visitor. So, just for the audience, could you tell us a bit more about this project? Like, what was it all about, and how it has impacted the entire community?
Yeah. I mean, the base was that I did actually have a lot of content, on my kind of hard drives, a lot of source code that I've collected over the years, and I've wanted to kind of upload it all to the web and expose it to everybody could find it. So that was kind of a big motivator here to make a community for developers where you could share your files and share tools and knowledge and links to resources and similar things. So it just kind of and I think my kind of in a way of working is I kind of just do things and then eventually, you know, most of the time the things and positive things is then the result. So I just kind of did it. I didn't have a kind of business plan or a goal. I just I want to do this. I'm kind of pretty dedicated. So it was my full-time job, and eventually, and it also, you know, when you see the traffic to your website, I think that's the kind of a joy. But you see that, hey, people enjoy it. People are coming back. There's a big traffic, and way
Yes.
back, you could actually see your Google rankings. So you could, in Google, using the Google toolbar, see your kind of SEO ranking, the page rank level, and you could have between 0 and 10, and I was like 8, and it also kind of gave me some pride that wow, I have a good site, it's popular in Google likes it, and at the traffic. But eventually, I sold the site, and then Stack Overflow came into the picture, and I think Stack Overflow and maybe the Facebook groups and other things killed a lot of those independent communities. And today, those hardly exist anymore. I mean, way back, there was a lot of few, I mean, there was a lot of, great small community sites where you kind of went to learn about different things. But today, there is not so many communities, and we had Stack Overflow for a while, but now Stack Overflow is kind of dying as well. So I think just natural that communities comes and goes, and because the world changes, of course.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So, Todd, like on the one hand, you were working with these kind of initiative, whether it's Programmer Seven or Programmer Seven group community, right? And other on the other
yeah,
hand, like you are also actively contributing on platforms like Stack Overflow. So,
yeah,
among these things, like you were doing this thing in a very great way, right? So, what actually motivated your transition from running a grown company to working independently through the TN data consult? So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
how was this transition occur? Like what was
Well, yeah,
your
I
thought?
mean, I sold my developer community for like in
Okay.
2008. And then I became, independent freelance consulting as a freelancer for a few years. And then I met the co-founder, and we created a training consulting company called Edumant. And we grew to about 35 people and offices in 4 different cities, and doing training and consulting. And it was a really great journey to experience building a company. But eventually, after doing it for 11 years, we want to do something else. So I left the organization and company, and went back to working as a freelance. And I do enjoy kind of teaching others and sharing knowledge. So what I do today, I do teach, I do train, I do develop training courses, but I do for companies. And my specialty is kind of in the .NET, the software architecture and security,
Yes.
and the identity space. And I think, sharing and understanding things is my kind of passion. And I really believe that you don't understand something until you can explain to someone else. So that's why when I want to learn something new, I make a conference talk, I do a user group talk, I do some other kind of course or workshop material, because in that way I really have to understand on the deep level, so I can explain to others, and then I know that, hey, I know this thing, I understand it. And I
Correct.
think sharing knowledge is kind of my passion. And for like, I think it was like 2 years ago, me and a few friends started a small .NET meetup here in the south of Sweden called .NET Skåne. And we have a monthly meetup. We bring in speakers. I speak and my friends speak, and we bring in external speakers. So I'm all about, sharing knowledge in many different ways.
Yes. And I think that is why like people appreciate your work always on social media platforms, and there
Yeah,
are
yeah.
so many folks like who are getting inspiration from your journey. So now moving ahead, let's talk bit about your core expertise, and one of this is authentication, because you
Yes.
often focuses on authentication. So just for the audience, could you tell us like why it is so important to work on authentication part when you are working with a
Yeah.
project?
And for like 5 years ago, I had different customers coming to me, hey, we need help with authentication or OAuth or OpenID Connect. And way back, mm, that's scary things. And most of the developers are actually scared and don't really want to touch authentication. But
Yes.
So I decided to actually let's crack the code. Let's kind of really understand it. So I started my journey kind of more dedicated, go into the kind of world of OpenID Connect and authentication, and by doing that, I did some, of course, as I said before, I did training courses and workshop. I developed those as a way to learn authentication, and I also, way then at that time, became active on Stack Overflow, helping others, explaining and answering questions about OpenID Connect. I did the blog posts, and as a way to kind of really understand it. And I think a lot of time the challenge with OpenID Connect and OAuth is that there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts moving at the same time, and really understand how they all connect. That's a challenge. And from
Mm.
outside, it just looks like magic. Just kind of just works, but how? So I really kind of went down the rabbit hole and to really understand all the kind of ins and outs of authentication, and then eventually you become good at it, and people come to you and want help, and they want to understand it. And so I do regular kind of open and connect workshops and training for companies and organizations around the world, just to because I think the key thing is that whenever you work with authentication, you need to understand how it works, and
Yes.
because otherwise it's a liability, because if you don't understand how it works and then you get hacked and you don't understand why, and you may be exposing your application to the bad guys. So I really think that understand how it works, so you can explain, you can troubleshoot it, you can follow it from start to end. I think that's the key.
Yes. And over the years, like you have worked closely with for implementing the OpenID Connect as well as OAuth. So
Yes.
throughout your so far experience, what do you think? Like, what are the common mistakes, or I would say the pitfalls that teams encounter when they are implementing the OpenID Connect or O authentication?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two big mistakes I see, and the first one is that you try to make one service and make one microservice, and you put maybe your identity service inside it, your client and APIs in the same application. And when you mix all of those things in the same application, it's really, really hard to reason about what is actually going on. And I really think the lessons I've experienced is that you really kind of need to a separation of concerns. You need to put your identity provider in one place, your client applications in another place, and your APIs in a third place, because otherwise it's really, really hard to really understand how it works and when it does not work, because then you have a lot of cookies, moving around, and I think that is the key mistake. Number one, to put everything in the same application, then you will have a lot of problems reasoning about it, until, because if you really understand it, well, maybe you can do it. But as a beginner, you need to be able to separate things so you can actually, make sense of it. And the second mistake I see is developers trying to do OpenID in JavaScript directly from a browser, going to your OpenID provider, and then calling APIs using your tokens. And to be honest, browsers are not good at storing secrets or tokens. So that is also a big mistake I see most people do, because that, first of all, exposes your front end to a lot of additional packages,
Correct.
dependencies on npm, and the more packages you bring in, the more exposed you are to various kind of, you know, um, vulnerabilities. And the second, I think it also adds complexity to JavaScript, where you add the OpenID as well. So I really believe in putting all the authentication into a backend component. You should use cookies to your React front ends, and using the kind of backend for front end pattern that I try to kind of tell people to implement, because trying to do OpenID Connect in a browser, well, it works, but is it a good idea? No, not really.
Right. I think you just shared your secret sauce, and I'm sure like those who wanted to
Yeah,
expert like yourself, they can follow these implementation, and these are the great advice anyone can follow to implement the OpenID Connect as well as OAuth in a better way, because now you
yeah,
know, now you are hearing it from the expert itself, so you know the
yeah, yeah,
worth
yeah.
of these tips, and then you can implement it. So that's a great share, Tor. Okay, we talked about authentication. Let's talk a bit more about the architecture, because whenever there is a
Yes.
discussion regarding the architecture, people always try to figure out the best way to build a good identity architecture. So let's
Mm.
say if there is a group of colleagues, or maybe if there is any particular team who wanted to start everything from scratch in 2026. So from your perspective, what should be the good architecture look like in 2026 when they are implementing?
I think the first mistake I see people do is not doing the authentication from day one, because it
Hmm.
is your authentication and security and identity is really a cornerstone in your architecture, and trying to retrofit it afterwards will be a challenge. And I also believe that uh, not doing OpenID Connect, as I said before, in the browser is another kind of advice. But then really, I think, get the security right from day one, authentication, and you will be making mistakes, of course, on the way. But I think you need to have it all in from day one, because adding it on afterwards is really will be difficult of most of the times. And design for the kind of least privilege and zero trust principles, I also think is key, trying to ensure that if one service gets hacked, the impact should be limited, and you
Correct.
should not be able to bring down the entire thing. And but I mean, I've been teaching security for 10 years, and there's a lot of things to really that are a challenge. But I really think that the biggest advice I can give is that every developer should have some basic web security training, because
Mhm.
it's like driving because on the web today is like as a war, constant war going on 24/7. Hackers, bad guys, the spy organizations, and everyone is trying to hack you 24/7. And being a web developer or developer in general, building web applications and not being aware and understand the fundamental attacks and challenges on the web, I think that's kind of should be a criminal offense. It's like driving a car without a driver's license. You need to have the fundamental knowledge to build for the web or the cloud in general, because then you can start talking about the security language with your colleagues, and you have a shared, base model for what, security things I need to kind of consider when we design an architecture.
Okay, so we can conclude that they should start from the very initial days, not at the middle of the project, because
Yes,
authentication is something that we should pay attention in the very beginning, and also know the basic fundamentals, right? When you are implementing
yes,
the thing, always keep those scenarios in mind when you are designing the things. So that's a
yes.
thing. All right. Okay, so now let's talk a bit about your another way of contributing to the IT industry, that is Stack Overflow. So you have contributed over 1100 plus answers on Stack Overflow, and I'm sure the number is increasing rapidly. So what exactly motivate you to consistently give back to the community in this as an author of Stack Overflow?
Well, I mean, as I said before, I started being active as Stack Overflow for like 5 years ago, when I was kind of getting into the kind of authentication and OpenID Connect and kind of areas. And way back then, I mean, it's really, really hard to find good questions to answer in the kind of more general topics like C sharp or web or JavaScript. And but in the areas of authentication, there was kind of fewer people answering, because maybe fewer people understood it. So you had a more better chance to find, daily. You could find an answer, a question you could actually answer. So it became my kind of daily routine to go back in, once a day and watch your kind of your tags that you were kind of watching, and helping others. But and also you saw your kind of the points, your score on your reputation growing up on. So it kind of this kind of gamification, that was kind of a big motivation there. But eventually, for like the last 1 or 2 years, the popularity of Stack Overflow has dropped due to AI and other things. So today, I hardly answer any question, because I don't see any questions to answer, more or less. So there's not much to do. And I think it's sad, because for me, it was a good community. And while you could read stories about people who have a bad experience from bad moderators or whatever, but in general, I had a good experience helping others and sharing knowledge. And I think it was a good time. And but things are moving on, and and people goes to AI or whatever. But I think it's still a good place to get answers on. And still, we need to. I mean, we need ways to feed the AI with good content. So
Yes.
and I think so. Today, I don't hardly answer anything because I don't see that many questions that are, you know,
Correct.
related to my areas.
Hmm. Okay. All right. So now we talked about the technical things. We talked about your core expertise areas as well as the contribution that you have made. Now let's talk a bit about your country, because I'm sure like there are so many things that we should know about Sweden. But
Yeah.
if there is one thing that you would like to share with the rest of the world, that you wish the rest of the world truly understand and experience about Sweden, then what would it be?
Yeah. I think it's the home computer revolution that started in the 1980s and 90s, where it was very common to get your Commodore 64 or Spectrum home computer, and everybody was kind of starting to code, and everybody was kind of learning, typing basic programs on your home computers.
Mm-hmm.
And that revolution went to the demo scene where you kind of created groups. And I was in part of one group called on Batari, that you try to really optimize them and get all the kind of power out of it, and in different ways compete with other groups, trying to create the coolest kind of demos and effects and other things. And so it kind of created a good community and a good creative playground. And today, that culture and those people who kind of joined that revolution way back then create a lot of kind of cool companies and cool games, and became very kind of influential in business when they kind of grew up. So I think a lot of Sweden in the Nordic countries, this kind of great, you know, culture way back then kind of create a lot of great minds, and create a lot of curiosity. And you were down in the computer in doing assembly language, and you counted your clock cycles because you really wanted to optimize your code to max. And it was really a fun time. Everybody was tinkering and experimenting and learning, and that kind of created a generation of inventors. And I think today we don't have that kind of a way of thinking. We have your phones, and they're really locked down, and you can't really open it up
Yes.
and look inside that easily. And so we went from a generation of creators to a generation of consumers. And I think you know how do we build tomorrow's kind of creators? I think that's the challenge. And also the second thing is that, despite, popular belief, we eat more things than just Swedish meatballs in Sweden.
Right. And you just shared a really very important line. And this is not applicable to Sweden, because for all country now we can clearly see that now the creators are less and consumer are more, right? They are
Yes.
trying to consume the content that is available. But that is
Yeah.
something that everyone should pay attention, and they should start something innovative, something new, because at the
Yeah.
end, like that will help in a longer way. So that's a
Yes.
great thing you just shared about the Sweden and for rest of the world as well.
Yes.
Okay, so Todd, now let's talk bit about the support system, because somewhere we believe that there are lots of people in our life who supported us and who guide us and influence us. So looking back on your own journey, who has been the most influential person or a group in your journey who had shaped the way you think, work, and lead today?
Well, I mean, I really think that regardless of your age, you really need to have some mentoring. You have to you have to have someone who you can look up to, who can
Mhm.
guide you and who can push you into new areas. And personally, from when I was like 11, 12, my kind of basic programming teacher, and I was a big influential, and really learned a lot about, the computers, and I was kind of exposed through that to new things. And when I joined with a group of friends, we created a demo group for our ST, where we kind of together create a lot of kind of interesting projects. And so over my years, I have had different mentors and who has pushed me into new directions. And without them, it's really, really hard. And today, with my age and experience, I want to be a good mentor to others. And
Hmm.
I do have a few persons and developers that they're juniors, but they try to help and push and motivate. And it's really, to me, a value to give them back to the next generation of developers. And I think my recommendation to all of you is that who are maybe more senior, find a few people to be a mentor for and be a role model for. And that's why I, for example, created my user group in Sweden to
Hmm.
allow juniors to meet, more senior developers and sharing knowledge. And I think that's my key, to always have someone to look up to, but at the same time also giving back to the junior developers.
All right. Okay. So yeah, Tor, like there are so many things, there are plenty of things that we can discuss here, but we are short
Yes.
on time. So I just want to take my last question. And just to wrap up the things, if you could give one piece of advice to every .NET developer listening today, so what would you like to share with them?
I really think that you should understand security and application security, because security is the key, to success. And we see on the news all the time organizations or companies or developers being hacked, and that
Hmm.
can have a really devastating impact. So, really understanding the secure coding and have a bit more security mindset. I think that's one thing. And the second thing is really to try to look under the hood of things. How does it behave under the hood? And do look a layer below or two to understand how things tick. Regardless if you go to the cloud or to authentication or just general development, trying to understand how it behaves and works under the hood, because then you can create better applications.
Correct. All right. So yeah, thank you so much, Tor, for joining us in this episode and for sharing your
Yeah.
expertise on different
Thank you.
areas. So it was pleasure talking with you. Thank you once again.